It is Monday, May 4th, 2020. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And may the 4th be with you! Yes, it is that time of year again. May the 4th. Yeah, if only we had force powers in this universe, or at least in this time, because it was supposedly in a galaxy far, far away a long, long time ago. But it would sure be nice, kind of help our transition from thought to material items, and that would certainly help out the economy and the market these days. It was a zero jiu-jitsu, get your ass kicked at jiu-jitsu Monday. Again, one of these days, it's going to get resolved. I predict, if not my gym, a gym in the greater Lane County vicinity will be opening their doors, if not only out of sole necessity. And you know what? I had to tell you, I really think all of this social containment shit, all these plastic barriers that people have been putting up, all that shit's got to come down. We're not in fucking prison, And when you look at it, it's like more and more they took the aesthetic and the decorative setup of prisons, and they're putting them in public. You got a prison guard at the front of the store that's like telling you to do shit like put a fucking mask on, or not be too many people in the fucking store or some shit like that. Give me a fucking break. We're not in fucking prison. We should not be getting treated this way. If anything, it's just inhibiting business, and flattening the curve is actually extending it. It's creating a bigger problem to last a longer period of time than simply letting the thing run through. It's funny. It's we're paying all kinds of attention about COVID and all that. And from what I understand, though, there's been some issues within hospitals with regard to them neglecting other things that are coming into the hospital, and certain other people being like, how should I say this, murdered, because they're not being treated properly. I just saw some videos supposedly of a nurse crying because she was witnessing this stuff in her ward, supposedly. And I want to really emphasize that, because, it's one thing about a narrative being directed to you. You can never be sure exactly what the motivations are of the narrative, what the actual goals are. They could be presented as measures for public health, but when you examine the measures themselves, you can see that they probably have a lot more negative issues that arise, or will cause more negative issues to arise, than the thing that you're trying to prevent from spreading. And that's really the thing, harm reduction. I don't care if you get to feel more panicked if you're believing one thing over another. It's what is your panic actually going to do for everybody else? And when I say that, I mean people that were working previous to this issue. They're currently having difficulties either because they can't get their checks, they're not getting their money on time. Hey, come on now. You put the government in charge of anything, they will fuck it up. You put them in charge of paying you, they will fuck it up. You put them in charge of regulating your health care, they will fuck it up. Look at Obamacare. You want a real big example of how incompetent government is? Obamacare. It took like 12 months. It was supposed to be like ready to go at launch. Okay, and they actually had months running up to the launch date when it was supposed to be available. It immediately crashed. It opened up, it crashed. Okay? It crashed and kept crashing, and people couldn't get their shit, and they couldn't get their insurance transferred over, and their carrier was dumping them because they suddenly qualify, and all this shit was caused by the initiation of Obamacare. Without Obamacare, everything would have been just fine. But no, we got to have Obamacare. So not only did they fuck it up on the website infrastructure, but the website itself was so poorly designed it did not work properly. And as a matter of fact, to give you an idea of how fucked up government is, they spent like hundreds of millions of dollars on that shit. Alright? They did all of that. It didn't fucking work. And then a couple of IT professionals got together over a weekend and they designed a web page from scratch that fucking worked. Over a weekend. And some beers. I think 2 guys. I think it might have been 3 guys. They might have actually had a reference from somebody else. I don't know. But it was a tiny number of guys versus a government entity, the DHS, Department of Human Services, supposed to be crafting this fucking thing. And they can't find enough competence between all of them. As a matter of fact, if they were to go back down to their receptionists, the people that take calls in to sign up for insurance and shit, if they were to go to like the DHS department that handles customer service for any of the department services or anything like that, if they were to go among those people, I guarantee you they would find somebody that's got all the motherfucking skills in the world. Okay, and the only reason they are there is because they can do this nice, cushy phone service job and have a continuous income while they're doing contract stuff and moonlighting at home and in other cases. And any one of these people could have designed the most sophisticated fucking healthcare website ever known to man. But no, they were taking fucking service phone calls because that's how fucking incompetent government is, I would suppose. There's so much of it is nepotism and favors that you do for other people and stuff. You got to do that to get elected and whatnot. And there's always that kind of stuff going on. But the question becomes, who is it serving? Whose interest is it serving? Is it serving the vast majority of your constituents, or is it harming the vast majority of your constituents? Or even a majority of your constituents? This is the decision to be made. It's not, let's jerk off because of some fucking thing we read in the fucking EU report or something from the UN or something like that. The fucking people that you serve in your district, your region, your state, your country. What's in their interest? And not just the people that sell PPEs and hospital administrators and health insurance providers and all that other fuck all that shit. What's going to benefit the greatest number of us? What solutions can we be looking at? Maybe COVID isn't as bad as we think it is. Maybe it's complete fucking overblown bullshit, and it's like brainwashing to be hearing it every third sentence or even every other sentence on TV. I swear to Christ, I walked in the door the other day, the first 2 words that I heard from the TV were like corona pandemic or coronavirus infection or some shit like that. It was like 2 words, 3 words, the first ones. It's like the first sound that I heard when I came in the door. It's like we've gone so far beyond saturation that it's inducing mania in some people, where they're just, that you could show them like statistical data, and if it's not jiving with what they're seeing on TV, they can't let it go. They can't let it go. It's because they sat there in front of the fucking TV and heard it and saw it getting beat into their skull for 3 to 5 hours a fucking day. That's fucking brainwashing. It's operant conditioning. If you do any study of a Psychology 101 study of operant conditioning, 2 very simple words, operant conditioning. Look it up. You'll understand why TV operates the way it does and why you hear COVID-19, pandemic, epidemic, catastrophe, every other fucking word on TV. It's operant conditioning. They gotta get you in a really panicked state so that they can do stuff like pass legislation that you would never, ever say yes to if you were to ever able to read through it. And give you a good example, 9/11. How long did we hear about, Saddam Hussein, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, and Patriot Act was ramrodded through in I think it was 2 weeks after 9/11 or some shit like that. Dead of night, 3,000 pages of text, completely revamped the entire security and intelligence apparatus and surveillance apparatus of this country, readjusted all the priorities, and happened overnight. Everybody eventually said yes to it because it meant that there was military contracts in their state or in their district or in their city or whatever, and so they were getting money from that. It was increasing prosperity in their locality, and on that face alone, you could say that it was a greater than, a better option than what we were facing. But see, the thing is what we were facing was on the other side of it is Ashcroft, and he came out, I think it was September 10th, and he said the Pentagon was missing $2 trillion fucking dollars or some shit. Actually, I think it was higher than that. It was I want to say it was either 7 or 9 trillion. It was a sick sum of money. Okay. He came out and he did that press briefing. It was 20 minutes long. He did it on September 10th. September 11th, that shit happened. And we forgot all about it. The Pentagon supposedly got hit with a jet. And the Twin Towers were supposedly hit with jets. And Building 7 collapsed for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And all of that happened. And then immediately after this, and very few people actually think about this, the Patriot Act was not a new thing. It had been circulating around D.C. for the previous 20 years. They renamed it Patriot Act and shoved it through fucking in the middle of the night. I mean, because all the Congress people are well, fuck, of course I gotta vote for it. It says Patriot Act. If I don't vote for it, my fucking constituents are gonna throw a fit. So you can only imagine. You get people in a really panicked state, and so when their government starts saying things like, "Oh, we got to take your children and put them in these work camps because there's not going to be work for them anymore." What are they really telling you, man? I mean, it's why wouldn't there be the ability for them to create a business and make themselves functional in modern society? What did COVID take that away too? I mean, it made it impossible for them to get a business fucking license and do business out of their house? I mean, what the fuck? No, we gotta make brown shirts. Because that's what you do, man. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down with some music. I kind of went a little bit long there, but, it happens. And so as far as where we're going to start, we're going to start with body count. Because that's just where we start. I don't know if I want to start with Carnivore, though. I think 99 Problems. This is the song for our current age. Hopefully it changes by the end of the year. It's Body Count, 99 Problems. But a bitch ain't one. First Dance here on Coin Metal. And that was Exodus with Thrash Under Pressure. You gotta be ready to roll with it when it's happening, man. And so, as far as what we're going to get into, I got a couple things here. I wasn't exactly sure how far I wanted to go or where I wanted to go specifically. But I do have a couple things here. Let me check something out here. Not that one. Yeah. I think we'll do this one. Because this one was actually from today. And so it's on CoinDesk. Hackers plant crypto miners by exploiting flaw in popular server framework Salt. And this is authored May 4th, 2020 at 1400 UT or 1410 UTC. Let's see here. And this is by Patty Baker again. Yes, penis. A hacking group has installed crypto mining malware into a company server through a weakness in Salt, a popular infrastructure tool used by the likes of IBM, LinkedIn, and eBay. Blogging platform Ghost said Sunday an attacker had successfully infiltrated its salt-based server infrastructure and deployed a crypto mining virus. Quote, "Our investigation indicates that a critical vulnerability in our server management infrastructure was used in an attempt to mine cryptocurrency on our servers," reads the incident report. Quote, "The mining attempt spiked CPUs and quickly overloaded most of our systems, which alerted us to the issue immediately." Ghost said Monday developers had removed the mining malware from its servers and added whole new firewall configurations, as in multiple. Salt is an open source framework developed by SaltStack that manages and automates key parts of company servers. Clients, including IBM Cloud, LinkedIn, and eBay, use Salt to configure servers, relay messages from the master server, and issue commands to a specific time schedule. SaltStack alerted clients a few weeks ago that there was, quote, "a critical vulnerability in the latest version of Salt that allowed, quote, a remote user to access some methods without authentication and gave arbitrary directory access to authenticated users." Oh shit, dude, that is so much more dangerous than them just installing fucking mining malware. SaltStack also released a software update fixing the flaw on April 23rd. Android mobile operating system Lineage OS said hackers also accessed its core infrastructure via the same flaw, but the breach was quickly detected. In a report Sunday, the company admitted it hadn't updated the Salt software. It remains unknown whether the same group is behind the Lineage OS and Ghost attacks. Some attacks have planted crypto mining software, while others have instead planted backdoors into servers. It isn't clear if hackers mined a particular cryptocurrency. Hacking groups have generally favored Monero, as it cannot be mined with just general-purpose CPU. It can be mined with general-purpose CPUs, not dedicated mining chips, and can be traded with little risk of detection. CoinDesk has approached SaltStack for comment, but hadn't heard back by press time. Let's see what else is here. Okay, and so this is on status.ghost.org, and this is their incidents page. Critical vulnerability impacting all services. Incident report for Ghost. Update: all traces of the crypto mining virus were successfully eliminated yesterday. All systems remain stable, and we have not discovered any further concerns or issues on our network. The team is now working hard on remediation to clean and rebuild our entire network. We will keep this incident open and continue to share updates until it is fully resolved. We will also be contacting all customers directly and to notify them of the incident and publishing a public post-mortem later this week. So yeah, this is just their incident report for that. But yeah, so I think we're going to continue to see this. I'm not entirely sure what to do to make Monero more appealing to people to just mine it. You know what I mean? It's like, why is there so much demand for their hash rate versus, say, Bitcoin? I mean, other than, of course, the anonymity aspects. I mean, you could just as easily be mining Bitcoin behind a VPN and indicating you're anywhere on the planet. You could be indicating you're in fucking Antarctica, you know. But the greater issue, I think, is that there's just not enough people that are aware of how much they can participate in cryptocurrencies. You know, there really is no law or edict that can stop you from writing code. They cannot stop you from copying code. They cannot stop you from modifying code and then redistributing the code. So, get the fuck on it. I don't know, I think there's plenty of interest, but there's somehow a disconnect with regard to resources and market viability. And I would argue this point is probably due to the existence of stable coins. If we didn't have them acting as an intermediary between US dollars and other fiat currencies and cryptocurrencies, then I believe that we wouldn't be seeing the same effect. You know, I think that a lot of the volatility is quote-unquote stolen in the conversion rate between USDT and Bitcoin, and that of course affects the relative price of Bitcoin in US dollars. And while that up front really might not be a concern, the fact is that energy is probably going to be getting more expensive, and so will hardware. And so when we're buying these things in US dollars, it's more expensive for us to do them. And so again, we need to be earning more. And even if we're to hodl the coins, we still need to be earning back more than we spent in order to make it a worthy venture. My apologies there. In order to make it a worthy venture. You know, and like I said, I really think that their dynamic, stablecoin's dynamic, is that they harvest all the volatility right out of it, and they're able to artificially suppress the prices of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in markets where they have pairings, and that affects the relative profitability of mining. Well, Monero miners, obviously there are enough of them that are hackers that they're going to find ways to continue the network. They're not going to let it die. You know, whether that means putting up their own hardware or putting up your hardware instead, they're still going to do it. Oh, my apologies there. Need to get a little water into me. Anyway, this next thing I got here, it's on coincenter.org. Without privacy, do we really want a digital dollar? And let's see who authored this bad boy. It's not actually giving us an author. Damn you. Anyway, continuing. Without privacy, do we really need or want a digital dollar? If a digital dollar is developed, it must be just as bare and private as physical cash. There we go. This is by Matthew Green and Peter Van Valkenburg. So, double penis. COVID-19 is accelerating discussions about digitizing the dollar. Relief payments to support those suffering economically have revealed shortcomings inherent in current payment infrastructure. Fear of contagion has made handling physical cash less desirable. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. You and your fucking surveillance state is making it more desirable. What are you talking about? The dollar may turn out to be one of the several facets of society that will not return to normal after this pandemic wanes. No, I think it's going to be just fine. Thank you very much. What is a digital dollar? By, quote, digital dollar, we mean a transferable digital token that is the legal equivalent of cash, not electronic bank balances, not a private company's promise to give you cash on redemption, but actual dollars issued by the government and backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. We should expect any digital dollar to be centrally managed with at least as much control as physical dollars are managed today. No, we shouldn't. This suggests an obvious design constraint. Digital dollars will have to be a centralized digital currency rather than a true cryptocurrency. But more on that later. Wrong. Completely fucking wrong. It would be even better if it were an official cryptocurrency. Continuing on. What kind of digital dollar should we want? China's progress towards a digital yuan illustrates that a state-run digital currency may involve substantially more state control over transactions made in that currency than is currently available with cash. While China's central bank promises to, quote, protect users' privacy, it does so by making transactions and identities anonymous between users, including intermediary banks, but not to the central bank, which sees and records all transactions and identities. If we create digital dollars, they should be private by design, such that, quote, as is the case with physical cash, even the issuing authority can't engage in surveillance of transactions system-wide. There's a difference between trusting an authority to abstain from inappropriately surveilling a mountain of available transaction data and building a system that never collects such data to begin with. Privacy by design means the latter, and later we'll describe how a digital dollar can be built this way technically. Yeah, no, wrong. It can't, but we'll get back to that. Privacy aside, there's also the question of whether a digital dollar will be easy to transfer from one person to another as physical cash is today. Cash is an ideal technology because it doesn't discriminate. It is a, quote, bearer, which means that possession is the only prerequisite for its use. This means that paying someone is as simple as handing them the cash. Bank transfers, credit cards, and other electronic payment mechanisms don't work that way. You must have an account with some bank or service provider before a payment can happen, and if that institution doesn't want you as a customer, doesn't want to pay the person you are paying, or wants to freeze your account, then you cannot make a payment. This kind of payment censorship may help stop some crime, but it also can be abused to systematically deny payment services to the poor or politically disfavored. If bearer payments like cash were no longer available, what remains would be a system of complete central control over individuals' participation in the official economy. Even China's proposed digital yuan has been designed thus far as a bearer asset, and the digital dollar should be no different. No, it's not a bearer asset. The central bank could say no. That all said, it is not clear that a digital dollar would in fact make things like relief payments any easier, and as just discussed, we are concerned that the decline of physical cash will inevitably harm the poorest among us, while also eroding everybody's privacy and autonomy. A cashless economy is a surveillance and control economy, a closed economy that only works for the privileged and the politically acceptable. To address these concerns, any digital dollar must have certain features. It must be bearer and transactions must be private by design. This would ensure that it has at least feature parity with physical cash. We are not advocating for the creation of a digital dollar, but if a digital dollar is developed, then it must be built to be private and liberty enhancing. Like cash, it must not rely on intermediaries, public or private, who can surveil and control the entirety of the digital dollar payments. Like cash, it must be open and available to anyone who wants to use it, and it must not discriminate between users. Here is how this is possible. Also, it must not tax every single fucking transaction we do for payment directly to the government to be dedicated to whatever the fuck they want. Continuing on. What is zero-knowledge privacy. At first blush, the goals of privacy and currency soundness may seem contradictory. In traditional electronic banking, the bank must keep track of the exact balances of each customer and record all transactions between them in order to prove that customers are only spending money which they are entitled to. However, recent developments in the field of cryptography have made it possible to build sound currencies that provide strong privacy for users. A successful approach to constructing such currencies draws on a suite of technologies called zero-knowledge proofs. These mathematical techniques, first pioneered at MIT in the 1980s, make it possible to prove the truth of a mathematical statement without revealing the complete details of that statement. In the context of a currency, this means that a balance holder can prove that she owns a sum of money in an account and that these funds have been appropriately transferred to a second individual. This can be done without revealing either person's identity, the sum of the funds, or any of the details of the transaction. Zero-knowledge techniques are well suited to the scientific literature and have been deployed in practical cryptocurrencies. These techniques could be used in a digital dollar system in order to safeguard the privacy of users. Unlike a traditional bank ledger, in a zero-knowledge system, each transaction would reveal no information about the sender, recipient, or amount sent. Yet proofs would protect the soundness of the currency from theft and counterfeiting. What's different from cryptocurrency? A centralized digital dollar would have several technological differences from existing cryptocurrencies. Those systems are intended to be run by networks of volunteers without the need to identify or trust any particular participant in the network. However, similar digital currencies can be deployed in a more centralized setting, where network infrastructure is operated by known providers, but anyone with a computer or phone and free software can still use the network. Facebook's anticipated Libra digital currency follows this model. The ledger of Libra transactions is maintained by Libra Association members, but unlike traditional banking, the transactions on that ledger may come from Libra users who are not necessarily customers of the association or its members. There is no reason why a centralized digital currency similar to Libra could not be issued and maintained by a public entity such as the Department of Treasury, which today produces paper dollars through its Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Treasury would be in charge of keeping and updating a ledger of valid transactions on the digital dollar network, but like the Libra Association, it would not need to have a customer relationship with the individual persons making those transactions. It simply checks that transaction messages are valid according to basic rules before adding them to the ledger. Any digital dollar system implemented by the government should combine elements of Libra's centralized architecture with the privacy guarantees afforded by privacy-preserving cryptocurrencies. Yeah, that's not really possible. Unlike decentralized cryptocurrencies, centralized digital currencies can be backed by existing financial instruments, such as fiat currencies. They do not require mining to create new currency and can be pegged to a real-world currency, such as the US dollar. No, they can't. Why do you think there's a fucking exchange rate for them on exchanges? It's because the value fluctuates between them. That's not a fucking peg. Continuing. Let's see here. Pegged to a real-world currency such as the US dollar. In this setting, the supply of currency in the system is controlled by a centralized party, so-called dollar-backed stablecoins are existing examples of this model. Yeah, and they're all flawed. None of them have been audited. Nobody knows whether or not they actually had the US dollars. A stablecoin issuer chooses to mint a certain number of stablecoins and commits to keeping real currency on hand as a one-to-one backing for all stablecoins in circulation. If a government issued its own centralized digital currency, it could have full control over how much new money it chooses to put into circulation on the network and to whom those balances should be distributed. Unlike the dollar-backed stablecoin example, each unit could be backed simply by the full faith and credit of the issuing government, rather than balances held in commercial banks. The issuing government could choose to use this power to create digital money as a direct means of stimulating the economy, providing basic income, or offering emergency support to individuals in a crisis like COVID-19. Unlike physical cash or banking, a digital dollar ledger could offer a real-time and publicly auditable record of the supply of money in circulation, and by using zero-knowledge proofs, this public accountability can be offered without revealing individual transaction details that could jeopardize the privacy of digital dollar users. Wrong, but we're not going to go there. Does this allow for scale? No. What would you lose by making these design choices? A major benefit of this approach is that, unlike traditional cryptocurrencies, the total number of transactions allowed by the system can be made to scale to tens or hundreds of thousands per second. This is vastly greater than systems such as Bitcoin that Bitcoin can currently accommodate. That's true. The cost of this approach is the loss of certain security properties available to decentralized cryptocurrencies. A key feature of cryptocurrencies is that they are resistant to transaction censorship. This means that it is hard for any party to prevent a user from spending money. Censorship resistance is more difficult to guarantee in a centralized system. For example, a centralized digital currency could be shut down entirely by the government that maintains the ledger. Individual payment messages could be ignored when they come from certain IP addresses, and balances could be rolled back en masse to an earlier state, meaning, no, you didn't make the money even though they have the goods now. Some of these protections may, however, remain in place due to the use of zero-knowledge proofs. For example, if a centralized provider cannot see the details of participants in a transaction and merely validates mathematical proofs for those transactions, it may not be able to filter out an unwanted transaction easily, or as easily. Censorship resistance is the only way to guarantee that a digital asset truly is bearer. Actually, it's worse than that. It's one of the only ways to guarantee that people will actually want to use it. I mean, really, why would you want to use a digital currency if you know that at any time the issuing agency could just say, you know what, we're gonna just delete this transaction. It just didn't happen. Like I said, if you were making anything, or if you say you gave massages or you made a meal for somebody and they paid you in a currency that could be rolled back like that, and the issuer of the currency say he doesn't like you, he knows you personally, he hates your fucking guts. No, your transaction doesn't get to go through. I don't like you. That's what censorship is in a currency. Now, if you knew that could be done on one network but not another, which one would you be more likely to be doing business on? I already know the answer to that one. You don't have to say anything. Continuing on. Censorship resistance is the only way to guarantee that a digital asset truly is bearer and can be sent directly from one person to another without reliance on a third party. Cryptocurrencies achieve this property by making network participants, miners, compete for the power to add transactions to the ledger. Even if some of the miners wish to censor a transaction, we assume that others will not, particularly if it means they are foregoing fee revenue. A centralized digital dollar would not have competitive mining. Why not? I don't know why not. But if the role of the ledger keeper was reduced to verifying zero-knowledge proofs, then any refusal to perform that verification risks indiscriminately censoring users throughout the economy. If the Treasury became corrupt, it could degrade the performance of the network system-wide, but it would be difficult to selectively block certain individuals or surveil their activities. No, if you're the centralized authority, you could be marking your transactions in such a way that the user's completely unaware of. Continuing on. None of these protections, however, are guaranteed, and new technologies always present unpredictable risks and unintended consequences. We must therefore preserve and defend physical cash and should never celebrate its demise. I'll agree with that point, absolutely. Cash, along with cryptocurrencies, is essential as a payment method of last resort that cannot be surveilled or controlled by corrupt governments or unscrupulous corporations. As we said at the start, digitizing the dollar is not a panacea for our current economic downturn or the pandemic at its heart. However, if governments do decide to develop publicly run digital alternatives to existing bank-mediated payments and physical cash, then technologies pioneered in the cryptocurrency space should deliver scale and accountability while preserving much of the privacy and freedom inherent in cash transactions, privacy and freedom that are essential to a free and democratic society. Matthew Green is an associate professor in blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. So I agree with the last section of this thesis that we cannot get rid of physical cash. And if you've ever been through an electricity outage for a significant duration of time, then you know that the viability of digital cash as being the only cash or the only mediums of exchanges, it's just not there. It's just not there. I mean, unless we have like wireless electricity everywhere or wireless signal everywhere, no. Even if you have signal, if you don't have a device that you can be receiving and transmitting on, you cannot be participating. You know, I personally had that experience out here. You know, we went without electricity for 4 days. That was 4 days that we could not buy anything with credit cards online because there was no online. You know, so again, the viability of us continuing as a society without the physical mediums of exchange, it's just not there. The perspective given here towards the end also concerning cryptocurrencies in a publicly mined setting. Now this, personally, I've felt this is the way to go. And while we've had some currencies try this in the past, the problem with them is that they did not have any official recognition by the governments that they were supposedly being sponsored by or representing or whatever. And they weren't really all that good about distributing their information to other people. And so, like, they tried to get over that in Venezuela by just saying, you know, you're going to fucking use the petro, period. You have to exchange your bolivars for petros and then spend them on for things that are priced in bolivars. You know, and everybody had to go along with it, or at least the people that were willing to tolerate that kind of bullshit. And I think this is one of the big rubs with fucking with any existing fiat currency is that And it's the same for a cryptocurrency. If you have a cryptocurrency and it's working one way, and then somebody comes along and changes it, just drastically, it has bad effects. People decide that they no longer want to be carrying their monetary value in that currency because they can't depend on it. And the same will be said for the US dollar should we ever come into a time where we have a centralized entity that's just doing all the quote unquote minting of the new coins and managing of the blockchain. The problem with a centralized entity such as a government running their own quote unquote decentralized but centralized system like this is that it would be subject to attack. And like it or not, private entities will always be able to afford more hashing power than the government will. And so it's one of those things where you could be wasting a lot of money on cybersecurity and shit like that with a centralized currency. Or what you could be doing is having the public mine it, or allowing the planet to mine it, and a lot of the problems go away right there. And also, you have to keep in mind that you're competing with existing cryptocurrencies that do not have any taxes or any of that other bullshit in them. And while some people might be willing to dedicate a little bit of their hashing power to government purposes, they're not necessarily going to do that. And they should be allowed to not do that, but still mine the coin. And see, where I think that a lot of people have a problem with this is that they don't really think about all of what I'm saying here. It's like, if you can imagine that instead of taxing people on an individual level, right? Say you've got a cryptocurrency, you don't replace the US dollar with it. It's got an exchange rate with the US dollar because the US dollar is managed by the Federal Reserve. It's i.e. a Federal Reserve note. And we probably even rename it that. We'd rename it to a Federal Reserve note and then have US dollars issued by the miners of the planet under the management, or at least proposed management, of the U.S. Treasury. So, like, if you can imagine it in Bitcoin terms, like, the Treasury turns into devs. They have a dev group, right? And they're like Bitcoin Core. They're not necessarily paid to be there, or maybe they would be paid to be there specifically because of what they do, but the government would be paying them, not us. And it would not be a default payment, that's like encoded into the cryptocurrency itself. It would be conditional. You either bust ass and do your fucking job right, or we replace you with another entity. We fork you. And so I think that on that basis, and also you would allow for people to be able to give more money for specific projects that are managed by the government. So say the government is managing things like land use or projects such as dams. And say enough of the people out there want the dams modified that they are willing to give up just a teeny tiny amount of their transactions that they dedicate to fishing spend to go directly towards modifying dams. And they might even be able to vote on specific projects and specific modalities of repair that they would like to see enacted. We're in an age where we could be selling that stuff to one another. Where you make a video of a proposal and you outline all your little details and you allow the fucking public to just execute it, okay? Just let the internet do what the fucking internet does, where people are looking shit up on Google and they're looking shit up on Wikipedia and other resources, and they're finding flaws all along our current policy the papers that support those policies, because people that know actual science are exposed to these papers that these policies are being made on that they've never read in their entire fucking lives, and never would have written, because they know better. They understand biology well enough not to put their name on a paper that says the stupid shit that those papers say. But they would be able to get some actual representation. They wouldn't have just a salesperson working for them who's probably a little more malleable with regard to their values and the things that they're supposed to be petitioning for. Because the values aren't necessarily there. They're just good salespeople. And so just, it's because it's a subjective thing to them, at least on the surface. They're not actually able to really appreciate the cumulative effects of the policies that they're helping to craft and enact. And so, it's these kind of ways that I think that our agency can be brought back to us through cryptocurrencies. Is that if we're going to be living a much more digital life, that our interests, our desires, our wants could be better represented than they ever have, because we can separate a lot of the third layer intermediaries that they've got their own fucking vocabulary of interests and priorities that are not adequately represented. That cloud out the interests that they're supposed to be representing. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down with some music, or throw back down with some music. As far as where to go, I know there's one, and I think we gotta remember this one because it's true. Megadeth, Peace Sells, here on Coin Metal. And that was Metallica with One. Yeah, typically I don't play more than one song by one band, but this fucking sorting thing is pissing me off, and it's causing it. I gotta find a way to adjust the defaults to where it just goes back to just playing fucking random shit, because that's the way I liked it. Oh, let's see here. Oh, wow. Cool. Yeah, I just heard back from Jason Dragon Wolf Tech, and the guy that I did that interview with. And if you haven't checked that out, that's actually on his channel right now. It's Jason Dragon Wolf Tech, and you can find him on Twitter and on Facebook. And yeah, I did that interview with him, and according to him, it's a positive sign. People have been retweeting it out there, so I know I've shared it a few times. I'm going to write that right now. A few times on social media. There we go. Cool. Alright, and so as far as what we're going to get back into, and he might message me again, so if you hear that thing, don't trip. But as far as where I wanted to get into here, no, I covered that one the other day. I've got a report that I wanted to go through, but it's a little bit old. I might have already gone through it before, so I don't know that I want to go through that again. That one's there. I pulled up one specifically that I wanted to talk about, and we covered that one already. Not going to cover that one because it's not there. We might cover this one, and I have another one that I might... Oh, this guy. I definitely want to cover this one, and as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to do it right now. And I'm going to say up front that Mr. Nouriel Roubini is a very interesting character. Sometimes I think he knows what he's talking about, and sometimes I think that he knows what a small group of internet investigators that he works with know. And that he communicates that in their stead. But I don't know. I don't know what to think of him, honestly, with regard to the things that he says concerning crypto. But I will say this: he has been known to crib me in the past, and when I say that, I mean that's not like an official accusation or whatever. It's just I often suspect that people in his class, or at least somebody in his class of financial people or whatever, listen to the show. Or have listened to the show, or something to that effect, and have mentioned to him something they might have heard on this show, and he's responded to it, or one of his little investigators listens to the show. I don't know, but I've heard certain things that lead me to believe that either A, he's cribbing me, which is a reasonable thing. I'm kind of a smart guy, kind of. Or B, he knows way more than he lets on, and he gives certain calls that he does specifically to give market impression that he can take advantage of. Now, whether or not he's doing that on behalf of somebody else, I don't know. I don't really know his role with regard to advising other people or whatever, but that's the kind of relationships that are in finance. And they all have little groupings that they're in, so you can't really fault them on it. Cool, thank you. We'll have to do it again. Hell yeah, yeah, definitely. Anyway, so this thing's on U.Today. Bitcoin critic Nouriel Roubini to trash crypto in new broadcast. He's trying to compete with me now. This is Nouriel Roubini. He probably thinks there's money in this or something. Anyway, it might be for somebody of his class. I don't know. Anyway, so this is by Alex Davbinya. My apologies, sir, on the pronunciation, sir, but yes, penis. Prominent Bitcoin detractor Nouriel Roubini has just announced a new broadcast about cryptocurrencies. The Nobel-winning economist maintains that crypto and blockchain are the, quote, mother of all bubbles that has burst. His new broadcast will air on 10 a.m., and I'm not going to say that. Roubini has also posted a new poll in which he asks his followers whether crypto could be considered the future of money. So far, this is the second most popular option after the speculative store value one. Hot on the heels of the March 12th crash, Roubini stated that Bitcoin had, quote, no hedge value. He opined that the equilibrium value of Ethereum was 0. So that was a very, very sparse article. Much less than I was anticipating. Anyway, let me see if there's a link to what Nouriel Roubini actually has to say on here. Let's see. Scroll. No hedge value, 0. Let's try Twitter, no. Let's try Nouriel Roubini himself. Destroys Bitcoin narrative. This was on... this is March 9th. Yeah, he might have won a Nobel Prize for economics at one point or another, but in all honesty, I think that a lot of these guys are trapped in certain ways that... in the way that they think about things. And this is just my impression of them. That... people such as Roubini or Jamie Dimon, they're used to existing in a financial paradigm that's essentially a big box, and it's just about sorting out how to get the resources that are distributed throughout the box into the segment of the box that's your collective earnings. That's like the objective. And you can do that because you have only a certain number of assets and only a certain number of currency units that you can be buying and selling them in within that box. the problem is that Satoshi Nakamoto opened the box, and he gave us the ability to create smaller boxes, but that have much bigger spans than anything within the box. And the way that he achieved that is by distributing code for free and saying, hey, yo, if you want to get in on this, download this, install this, and mine this. And people said, sure, man, let's do it. And that was over 10 years ago, and now it's worth over fucking, what, $9,000 per coin. So, I mean, that's the box has been opened. And not only that, he gave us an instruction set for how to open the box for ourselves and create our own little boxes of our own that have a much bigger span than any of these regulated centralized currencies. And because that instruction set exists in function and in full form and in text form all over the internet, I think that it will persist, and it will persist beyond all effort to regulate it. Because it's not anything other than people's desire to use it as currency that even pushes anybody to mine it. That's the incentive to mine it. Now, we're currently in a situation where people cannot discern between what is valuable and what is not. And this is because there are a wide variety of distortions going on in the marketplace, most of which are being mediated by the fiat currencies and their proxies within crypto. And I call these are the stable coins. They are proxies for fiat currencies within the crypto market. And because there is no intrinsic connection between those tokens and the fiat currency markets, or fiat currency in and of itself, there is no intrinsic connection between the two. There is no persistent connection between the two. They are constantly manipulated. And because of this, we have no true value out there. We have no true understanding of what value is within cryptocurrencies. We have a baseline value, though, and that's discerned by watching what it takes to actually mine it. Now, not enough of that is being done out there by people like you. People like you got to be firing up some hardware and supporting a network. And I'm not saying support anyone in particular, but I mean dedicate some fucking hardware to mining. Find something that you can mine profitably, or at least learn how to mine profitably with it, and then upgrade from there. You know, you don't know what you need until you use what you have and you find out what your deficiencies are. And then you can observe what they are and see how exactly you can go about addressing it. And there are a myriad of options and resources out there telling you exactly how you can do that. You know, people like to play up the technical aspect of this, like it's just so fucking complicated. You know what? I was scratching the surface of Linux when I picked up on Bitcoin. Just scratching the surface. I've been an end user on computers. I did a little bit of HTML stuff. Nothing that's an actual website that I made money on or something like that. But most of my use of the internet and computers in general has been end user stuff. I've done minor editing and whatnot. So I'm not like some ultra high mind fucking technical minded motherfucker when it comes to this stuff. I understand concepts though, and unfortunately it seems like I understand them a lot better than some of the people that claim to be experts in this space, because they keep running into this idea of trying to resurrect a monopoly even within cryptocurrencies, and maintaining some sort of reign of control over the global economy via this leash that they want to put on it. And the problem with that is that the technology that we have available in hardware and software wise is so far beyond that. Your average cell phone these days, you could be mining on it. And if enough people were mining exclusively on similar systems, the difficulty would remain low enough for you to do it at a profit, and same thing with everybody else. That's how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to have an incentive to do it. And your incentive is, A, you want your fucking transactions to go through without anybody telling you no, and I mean anybody. You want to be able to store your monetary value without a third-party intermediary. And you want a reliable network to convey those transactions on. It's like if you were to be building a road. Like say there was a building 3 miles away from you. There's no connection between you and it, but they produce food there. And while they have food over there, they don't have a whole lot of people that live over there, but a whole lot of people live near you. So it would be in your collective interest between you and those other people that live that far away from the food producer to make the road between you and the food producer. Because the more defined the path it is, the higher the likelihood is that when you go out to get something from that food producer, you will return with it. Okay? And the easier you make it for that traffic and that business, that commerce to happen, the better it is for both you and the food producer. Hell, you might even get the guy contributing to it on his end. And so when people ask you, like, who will build the roads? Well, gosh, does anybody around you have a commercial interest? I mean, anybody. I can guarantee you, if you knock on 10 doors, you will find at least 3 people that are willing to pick up a fucking shovel and contribute to the construction of a road that will connect you to some sort of opportunities that you currently do not have access, that you currently do not have markets, that you currently do not have access to, products, services. Because it enhances the situation for everybody is willing to contribute to it. Now, of course, they'll come to a point when more people are receiving a benefit from it than actually contributed to it, and that's fine. But as long as I think the problem we run into is that we develop an ossified dependence on that road, and so we suggest things like, we should define an organization that is set up specifically to maintain the road. Well, maybe they do that, and they do it so good that they can sit around on their asses for the majority of the time. And so after a while we start looking at them and saying, well, do we really need to continue to pay for you guys? I mean, because you're not really doing anything, and the roads are really great, you're working out great, man. I don't think we need to pay you anymore. And then you fire those people, and after a while the roads get fucked up again, and you have to go through the whole cycle again. Now, what if it were like an implicit thing that if you were to be using this service, such as the road, such as, electricity, the creation of electricity, or the access to a lake, or something to that effect, that you would be willing to throw a little shoulder power to it, or a little monetary power. Maybe you're not exactly fiscally adept, and you're not creating a hell of a lot of monetary value, but you know what? You can still move a shovel. You could be creating value for somebody in that way. I think that now that we have the kind of communication that we do, like social media and YouTube and all those other types, that we can be making a market for labor that would exist much like, I think, the initial cryptocurrency markets, where people are free to say, hey, I want to hire you to do something, or I'm willing to help you do this thing. Let's set up an exchange. And you could be doing that online in fully enforceable digital form. That if it were to be, if there were ever some sort of dispute, that the arrangement could be demonstrated to a magistrate. Say, hey, yo, this was the contract that we both signed. This is the service that I rendered. This is the pay that I expected, and this is the pay that I got or did not get. You know, and those kind of things could be resolved still in the same legal system that we have now. You don't even have to make new laws for it. You know, we have the concept of ownership and private ownership and public ownership. We already have these things. We already have the apparatus for regulating it and maintaining these things. So, you know, when it comes to the introduction of cryptocurrencies, you know, people like Mr. Rubini and Mr. Warren Buffett and Jamie Dimon, as I said, they are still constricted in a market dynamic where you, the average person, was not able to create a globally distributed monetary unit and network for maintaining it and transacting it. They're living like back in like the year 2000, before any of this really came about. But it's here now, and trying to parse it with what they know of economics and finance is especially difficult. And I think that this difficulty is going to continue for some time. Now, how it'll affect the fiat currencies that we currently use, we see it every day. And I think Venezuela is a little bit ahead of the curve with regard to their monetary liquidation and their migration to cryptocurrencies. I don't believe that the average person there is as invested as they probably should be in cryptocurrencies, but at the same time, they aren't completely unaware of them. You know, they're being forcibly introduced to them by their government. And what I expect to be a product of that, and we'll probably see it either this year or maybe even next year. It really depends on how it sorts out politically. They're trying to displace Maduro still, so. But either way, one of the things that I expect to happen in Venezuela specifically is that their local economy is going to entirely decouple from their government-mandated economy. And that the funding that was being injected into it from the local populace will simply dry up. And they will create their own alternative economy within Venezuela. You know, they're already pretty ahead of the curve down there with regard to their orientation with biofuels. I think it was Argentina for a while was subsidizing the production of sugar beets, specifically for making methanol. I think it was methanol. It was either methanol or ethanol, one of the two. But they were using that to fuel their vehicles, and it was working out pretty good. I see that oil is going to become a bigger liability in the not-so-distant future, and you're going to be able to use it only as an export to those states, those governments that are still intent on remaining dependent upon it. But that I think the next decade really is going to be the transition away from oil, and that we're going to be replacing it with bio-based derivatives. I think that transition probably should have happened over a century ago. And as a matter of fact, it's almost a century since we made the legal frameworks that caused our deviation towards this oil dependency that we've enjoyed for the last century. And oil-defined politics that we've enjoyed for the last century. Those are all a product of our deviation from a multi-based economy to an oil-based economy, a finance-based economy, an oil finance-based economy, a war-based, oil-based, finance-based economy. I mean, of course, all three of those are intrinsically linked. You need fuel to run vehicles, you need vehicles to run a war, so on and so forth. But again, this is a product of living within that single monetarily defined rubric. You know, you've had the US dollar as the default reserve currency for probably the last half century. And that's been really beneficial for some, and it's been really detrimental for others. And I think at this point, though, where the Fed is having to print trillions of dollars, and we're actually going to get into that next, just to keep the economy afloat, they're trying to replace organic commerce, i.e. you having a business, running that business, doing business with other people. They're trying to replace that with some sort of blockchain bullshit. And I don't really see it working out all that well. Anyway, let me get back to this thing here. U.S. Treasury to borrow $3 trillion in 3 months to pay for pandemic. And this is on NPR.org, of all places. This is authored May 4th, 2020. And if it goes too heavy on spin, I'll ditch it. But we're going to see if we can rend any actual information or data out of it. And this is authored May 4th, 2020 at 6:02 p.m. Eastern Time. The U.S. Treasury Department plans to borrow nearly $3 trillion between April and June to bankroll the federal response to the coronavirus pandemic. It is an unprecedented level of deficit financing to match the historic economic hit caused by the virus. In a single quarter, the government will borrow more than twice as much as it did all of last year. Quote, the increase in privately held net marketable borrowing is primarily driven by the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak, the Treasury Department said in the document. The government had expected an influx of cash during the April to June quarter as businesses and families paid their income taxes, but the tax filing deadline was pushed back until July. Meanwhile, the economy cratering and unemployment climbing to levels not seen since the Great Depression, Congress has authorized trillions of dollars in relief payments, unemployment benefits, and loans to small businesses, as well as money for vaccine research and coronavirus testing. The Treasury Department says it expects to borrow $677 billion between July and September. Despite the surge in federal debt, the government's borrowing costs remain low. The Federal Reserve has promised to buy as much Treasury debt as necessary to weather the pandemic. Oh, I'm sure they have. Quote, this is the time to use the great fiscal power of the United States to do what we can to support the economy and to try to get through this with as little damage to the longer-run productive capacity of the economy as possible, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said last week. Powell described himself as someone who has long argued against runaway federal deficits. But this is not the time, he said, to let that get in the way of us winning this battle. Which battle would that be, dude? The purchasing of the United States? Because, it seems like you might exactly be able to do that when you're printing off $3 trillion worth of liabilities to us. Come on now. That's money that needs to be paid back at some point. That's not just them just handing us fucking money. And the problem with that is, I think that the displeasure that I'm talking about happening with Venezuela, where they will literally decouple their physical economy from the government-based economy. Meaning that when you go to the store and you go and you buy goods from the store, those goods will not be something that you're paying for in bolivars. They'll be something that you're paying in Doge. You see what I'm saying there? Where, the assessment of taxes for the state of Venezuela and all that, no. Not going to happen. And the migration, the forcible migration over to the petro, again, Not going to happen. Because you have decentralized currencies that work as well, if not way better, than the petro, without the discrimination, without the taxation. So again, this migration that I see that is probably going to start in places like Venezuela, and if it hasn't already, and I've been talking about it for probably the last 3 years now, with regard to Venezuela. So my confidence is that we'll probably see the evolution there first, where we're just going to see a big uptick in the amount of retail commerce that's being transacted in cryptocurrencies within the national borders of Venezuela. And of course, we might not see it directly within Venezuela, but certainly within the nations surrounding it, where the transactions are not even happening within Venezuela, but they're happening in like Colombia, Bolivia, and in others. But the point being is that the monetary value that those retail transactions are involving will be entirely frictionless. And whatever taxation that is experienced at the retail level will be something that's done willingly. Meaning that the people there that are the customers, they're going to be determining which stores that they want to go to based on which currencies they're willing to transact in. And when they start seeing Doge accepted here on the window, they're gonna download a Doge capable wallet. They're gonna put some Doge in it, and they're gonna go there and do some shopping. And the greatest value of it to any governing entity would be measuring which currencies are used the most within their border. And of course, that would probably determine for them which ones that they should actually support. And I expect this dynamic to exist as long as we're in a legal rubric where the government and the currencies that the government is providing us to transact in and accumulate wealth in and whatever, as long as those are centrally controlled by a singular entity and an entity that gets to change policy at any time and drastically affect the relative value of everybody's savings with just a single switch, turn that printer on, printer go burr, and just vanishing value out from under the US dollars that you got in a bank account. While that's the case with the centralized, mostly digital currency that we circulate now, you cannot expect that people are going to migrate to it when, in fact, they can just as easily use a decentralized currency. One that you have no interface with. One that you're not assessing taxes in, or cannot assess taxes in. And like I said, I have foreseen this migration for a while, and Venezuela is the most likely, I think, to probably get there first, because they've got a lot of hydroelectricity, so their biggest problem comes down to bandwidth and hardware. But they've got the electricity, so supplying the power to an increased grid or whatnot is not that difficult for them. But yeah, I see them being among the first to enjoy the 21st century economy, but it's not going to be due to any policies that Maduro or even Guaido enacts. It's going to be because the people simply quit fantasizing that the government apparatus is there to help them or to resolve their differences or help them resolve business issues and stuff like that. When they cannot keep themselves from over leveraging the country against its natural resources that they do not have ownership over, that belong to the people. And as I said, they're not going to give up ownership. They're simply going to transition from one monetary unit that they're exchanging value in to others. Not specifically one either, because there are literally thousands of them out there for them to use, with more on the way all the time. And I think that this kind of pressure is actually going to cause a resurgence in the interest in creating new proof-of-work currencies that people can mine profitably because they're getting in on the ground floor with them. And that we're going to be seeing a transition of people's monetary interest and value from existing currencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the ones that are currently on the board to ones that are actually performing better, and not performing better solely in a fiscal sense, but also in a physical sense. That their apps actually run right. They don't fuck up. You're able to establish a good connection because there's a lot of nodes out there and there's a lot of people on that network contributing to it. That is in the future. We had it for a very, very short period of time within Bitcoin, and we've had it multiple times in altcoins. But we are going to see it happen again, and especially now that so many more of you are sitting at your desktops. And holding your devices and doing work from devices and out of circumstance and also natural evolution, because your job really didn't necessitate more than an internet connection to begin with. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And, I haven't been playing a lot of Slipknot, and I feel the need for it. So, which song to play, though? Let's go with this one, Custer, here on Coin Metal. And that was Sixth with Bland Street Bloom. And it is with that I'd like to close out this episode. Thank you very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. And so as far as our last dance is concerned, I'm still kind of digging around for something here. And I think I ended it kind of goofy last time because I hadn't fully audited the periphery stuff that I was listening to. And so kind of ended up with the wrong song for the end. But as far as where I wanted to go this time, let's see what time we got here. Got roughly about 5 minutes. I think we can do... yeah, why not? Let's do... Because I got a little bit of 12-Foot Ninja playing in the background, and I just don't play them enough. And so, where is it? Here we go. One Hand Killing by 12-Foot Ninja here on Coin Metal Last Dance. Thank you very much for listening again. Y'all have an excellent evening. Good night.